I had been invited to spend a few days on the farm 24 Rivers, just outside of the town of Falvart in the Limpopo province, by Liz Hunter and her husband, Ken Maud. Liz is one of the family members of the family trust that owns the farm. I really did not know what to expect when I drove up to the farmstead, but when I stopped in front of the little wooden fence and saw it, quietly resting amongst the huge eucalyptus trees, with smoke drifting lazily over the rooftops from the kitchen chimney, I knew that this was indeed going to be something very special. When I walked through the little opening in the fence and up onto the veranda of the main house, time seemed to slow and I was embraced by a feeling of warmth and peace. Knowing some of the history of a place before you visit brings so much more meaning and enjoyment to the experience. Not only do you occupy a space, you become a participant and part of people's lives from the past. I was so kindly invited by Elizabeth Hunter and her husband to come and spend time with them on the farm 24 Rivers, which has been in the family for over 130 years. Could you give me a brief history of the family and how they came to be at 24 Rivers?
Difficult to be brief, but my grandfather and my grandmother both came to South Africa separately. My grandmother came to join her aunts who were on a farm nearer Ellis Russ, and but they left there because of the rinderpest that killed all the cattle, and they had malaria a lot of times, and then of course the Boer War broke out. They were helped by the British soldiers to get through to warm baths, where they stayed actually in the bathhouses for the duration of the war. And that's where my grandmother met my grandfather, who had been in Rhodesia but had come down fighting for the British, but he didn't enjoy the Boer War at all, and landed up growing vegetables in Modimolle for the soldiers, and met my grandmother who was staying. And after the war, my great aunt bought this farm 24 Rivers, and my grandfather in the meantime had asked my grandmother to marry him, and they came here and settled here, the two aunts and my grandparents. They built the house in 1910, and it's very much as it was in those days. Nothing much has changed. It was always our sort of special place, and we would come a couple of times a year. So my grandfather bought an ox wagon that was abandoned on the Drakensberg, which apparently had belonged to General Louis Botha.
I read it on the
plot. And that was his mode of transport. And he was a hunter. He always only hunted for the pot.
Liz, the St. John the Baptist Church was designed by a very prominent architect of the time, who also designed and built a number of historic buildings in South Africa. Can you tell us a little bit about how that came about, and then why he was commissioned?
Well, I think that my aunts had delusions of grandeur. In fact, I think they were quite grand old ladies. Well, they weren't that old then. And so they decided that our church on 24 Rivers needed to be designed by Sir Herbert Baker. Whether he was Sir Herbert Baker at that stage or not, I don't know. And so apparently they contacted him, and so they were very proud of that. And so it's something that's been mentioned often. Anglican priests used to come here once a month and do a service there. So it was called Church Sunday, and all the local farmers who wanted to come to an English service used to come, and then they would have a day of lunch and tennis. So Church Sunday was quite a a big day. Yeah.
And a fantastic part of history, and very close to the town of Faalwater. If the general public they have access and they can come and see it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. The church is not used for the Sunday services now because it's too small. But the little church has still got everything in it that, you know, it's always had, as well as the old organ that my grandmother used to play every Sunday all her life when she was here. It's a very special place, particularly in our memories, you know, my siblings and myself, or my family. It's been a sort of center of everything, you know, people have got married there, buried there, christened there.
So you were all christened in the same...
In this christening robe. We used to make a little house in this bole of the tree here, and we used to climb up here and play housey.
Liz is an accomplished artist and works from the original school classroom which she has turned into her studio. She specializes in portraitures, but is very well known for her watercolors of donkey carts that were, and still are, very much part of the Faalwater landscape. Liz still does commissions, so if you'd like an Elizabeth Hunter as part of your prized collection, I have left a link in the description and you can get in touch with Liz. It was my last night at 24 Rivers. We sat around the old dining room table enjoying our meal, and afterwards retired to the living room to the warmth of the fire and the conversation. I sat intrigued, listening to the stories about the family, just as many visitors to the farm had done before me. But then, sadly, it was time to blow out the paraffin lamps and head for bed. As I drove out of the farm gate for the last time and turned onto the sand road that would take me north to Lepalale, I was filled with nostalgia. I thought about Ted, a legend in the area, who, when he had arrived, had come to a wild land but had accomplished so much in the area. Not only had he run a profitable farm and trading business, he had also started the North Waterberg Farmer Society, and as its secretary been instrumental in getting the railroad to Faalwater, telephone communications to the area, and a post office with a regular postal service. He was also the land surveyor and appointed commissioner of oaths for the area, and had built a school for the black children on the farm. I thought about the two grand aunts, Edith and Catherine, who, in their Victorian dresses, had come to a wild land but had got on with things and were the catalysts that had built a vibrant and thriving community. Liz has compiled a book called Pioneers of the Waterberg, which is a detailed photographing and historical account of the first settlers into the area at the turn of the last century, and is the story about her family, who were among the very first to settle in the Waterberg. Liz very generously gave me a signed copy which I have enjoyed immensely, and which has allowed me a glimpse into the hardship and the happiness, the struggles and the successes of her people, who were the pioneers of the Waterberg.